We are witnessing a quiet and profound social shift, the voluntary withdrawal of psychologically mature individuals from the core structures of modern society. This isn't a dramatic protest or a political movement, it's a silent, deliberate uncoupling. The most conscious and integrated among us are stepping back from the mainstream. This is not a retreat born of misanthropy or failure but a strategic decision to disengage from a system they can no longer align with ethically, psychologically, or energetically. This phenomenon was anticipated by pioneering psychiatrist Carl Jung, who saw it as an essential stage in the process of individuation, the journey toward psychological wholeness. He called it the necessary withdrawal, a point where an individual's expanding consciousness makes participating in the collective unconsciousness not only frustrating but also physically and psychologically painful. This essay will explore why this exodus is happening, arguing from a Jungian perspective that it's a healthy, adaptive response to a world that has, in many ways, fallen asleep. We will examine the mechanics of the collective unconscious, the death of the social persona, the burden of heightened sensitivity, and the archetypal necessity of the hermit phase. Society as a theater of the unconscious. To understand the nature of this exodus, we must first understand the environment being left. Jung proposed that beyond our individual unconscious, there lies a collective unconscious, a deep layer of the psyche shared by all humanity, containing universal patterns called archetypes. While this is a profound and rich part of the human mind, society often operates on a more superficial, yet powerful, layer, the collective consciousness. When a society is unself-aware, this collective consciousness devolves into a state of collective unconsciousness, running on a form of social autopilot. This societal autopilot is fueled by shared delusions, unquestioned beliefs about success, progress, and normality that are rarely examined. Mass projections, the unconscious act of disowning our own undesirable qualities, our shadow, and casting them onto others, whether it's a different political group, a rival race, or another nation. Agreed-upon shadows, societal sins we collectively ignore or justify for the sake of comfort and continuity. These are not glitches in the system, they are its core programming. The machinery of society, its commerce, its politics, its media, depends on this widespread, unconscious participation. It requires individuals to identify with their assigned roles and not ask fundamental questions. The awakened individual, having done the difficult work of confronting their own personal unconscious, becomes a glitch in this matrix. They can see the projections, recognize the delusions, and understand the games being played. As Jung himself experienced, ordinary social interaction can feel like a strange pantomime. It's like being awake in a room full of people talking in their sleep and being constantly asked to pretend you're asleep too. The effort to constantly translate a conscious understanding into the limited language of the unconscious collective is a source of profound isolation and exhaustion. 2. The internal catalyst, the death of the persona. Before awakening, we navigate society using a persona, the social face or mask we present to the world. A well-functioning persona is necessary for social cohesion. The problem arises when we confuse the mask with our true self. The journey of individuation involves breaking this identification. Through self-reflection and confronting one's shadow, an individual makes contact with the self, with a capital S, the central archetype of wholeness, the true core of the personality that encompasses both conscious and unconscious aspects. Once a person has truly touched this authentic self, the persona becomes a prison. Returning to the performance required by society feels like a form of psychological death. The awakened person can no longer smile to maintain harmony when they feel sorrow. Espouse opinions they see through to belong to a group. Chase status symbols they recognize as empty. This is not a rejection of others but a commitment to authenticity. They have become too real for environments that demand falseness. The withdrawal is not antisocial, it is pro-authentic. It is the logical consequence of finding oneself in a world that asks you to be someone you are not. 3. The unbearable burden, heightened sensitivity. As one integrates their personal shadow, a painful shift occurs, the collective shadow becomes glaringly visible. Once you have honestly faced your own capacity for darkness, jealousy, or pettiness, you can no longer tolerate the societal spectacle of mass projection. Political debates, for example, cease to be a battle of ideas and become a tragicomedy of two groups violently projecting their own unconscious material onto each other. Social media transforms into a 24/7 shadow projection machine, a digital coliseum where unconscious anxieties and hatreds are unleashed. For the conscious individual, this is not just an intellectual observation, it is an energetic assault. Increased consciousness often brings heightened sensitivity. Being in a crowd or scrolling through a newsfeed can feel like being subjected to a chaotic storm of unconscious emotions, anger, fear, and desire, that others seem oblivious to. Jung noted that after his own profound awakening, being in large groups became almost unbearable because he could feel the swirling psychic turbulence. Participating in this system becomes impossible. You cannot choose a side in a conflict when you see that both sides are fundamentally acting out the same unconscious drama. The awakened withdraw not from a place of moral superiority but from a place of psychological necessity. To participate would be to betray their own integrated wholeness. 4. The energetic cost of consciousness. Maintaining a conscious perspective in an unconscious environment requires immense psychological energy. This invisible labor includes constant filtering, not reacting to the projections directed at you. Energetic boundary maintenance, preventing the absorption of the anxiety and negativity of others. Psychological translation, navigating the vast gap between depth perception and surface-level discourse. Frequency holding, maintaining one's own vibration amidst the static of collective unconsciousness. For the unconscious person, social life is energetically neutral or even charging, they are flowing with the current. For the conscious person, it is like swimming upstream against a powerful tide. This relentless expenditure leads to chronic fatigue, burnout, and a deep sense of depletion. Jung observed that for many of his most advanced patients, the cure was not more therapy but a radical change of environment. Withdrawal, to nature, to solitude, or to a like-minded community, was not an indulgence but a strategic conservation of a finite resource, consciousness itself. It is the decision to stop pouring the clear water of awareness into the sandy ground of collective unconsciousness. The hermit phase, a psychological imperative. This withdrawal is not a random occurrence but a universal, archetypal process Jung called the hermit phase. This is a necessary, temporary stage in the individuation process, a period of incubation and integration. The hermit archetype represents a conscious retreat from the collective for the purpose of inner work and spiritual maturation. It is a time to integrate the insights gained from shadow work. Allow the authentic self to consolidate without the distorting pressure of social expectations. Listen to the inner voice, the voice of the self, away from the noise of the world. Carl Jung's retreat to his Bollingen Tower was a tangible example of the hermit archetype in action. For him, this was not an escape from his life or work but an essential part of his life's work. The seclusion allowed him to engage in a profound internal dialogue with his own psyche, which in turn fueled his groundbreaking theories. The individuals who withdraw today are following this same ancient pattern. They are not lost but rather in a necessary phase of deepening, gestating a wisdom that could not be born in the hustle of everyday life. This period of withdrawal is vital for solidifying a newfound sense of self and purpose. The return from the hermit phase. The hermit phase is rarely a permanent state. The ultimate goal of this inner journey is not eternal isolation but a return with a gift. However, the awakened individual does not return to the chaotic center of the collective they left behind. That would require a de-evolution, a refragmentation of their hard-won sense of wholeness. Instead, they become what Jung termed border dwellers, operating on the margins or edges of society. Their return is characterized by a different kind of engagement. Guides and mentors, they may serve as guides for others undergoing their own spiritual crises or personal awakenings. Artists and creators, they express their deep insights through art, writing, and music, giving form to the unconscious and the numinous, the spiritual or awe-inspiring. Community builders, they build conscious communities and alternative structures that align with their values, providing a new kind of social fabric. Their contribution is powerful precisely because it is quiet and targeted. They create pockets of consciousness, oases, that serve as way stations for the next wave of awakening souls. This paradoxical disappearance from the mainstream is what enables them to build the foundations for a more conscious collective future. Disappearance as an act of evolution. The great uncoupling of the awake from the asleep is not a societal failure but a sign of human evolution. It is a natural process, driven by an innate psychological imperative toward wholeness. If you feel this pull to withdraw and simplify, it is not a sign of weakness or a failure to cope. Rather, it is your psyche's healthy immune response to a toxic level of unconsciousness. It is an archetypal call to honor yourself over your persona, authenticity over approval, and depth over breadth. This withdrawal is ultimately an act of love, a deep love for truth, for consciousness, and for humanity's potential. The disappeared aren't abandoning the world, they are retreating to their inner workshop to forge the tools and maps that the world, in its future awakening, will desperately need. Their silence is not an absence but a gestation. Their disappearance is not an end but a necessary preparation for a more authentic and meaningful beginning.